All right, artists, we have already created our practice drawings. We've used the flower picture and we have created the tree branch picture. And now we are ready to begin our watercolor garden painting. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to do the flower one, but if you would rather make yours look more like a tree branch, go back, watch the practice, and you can make it larger on your bigger watercolor paper. All right, so what kind of things do you need for, what materials do you need for this? First off, you need some thick white paper. If it's bigger the better, that's great. If you don't have this big of paper, this is about 12 by 18. If you don't have that big of paper, that's okay, but as long as it is not computer paper, you should be fine to put the watercolor on top of it. You also need oil pastels. These are kind of like crayons, but a lot brighter. They're a lot smoother. So oil pastels for this, and then of course watercolor. I have liquid watercolor, but you can definitely also use tray watercolor. I have round brushes of different sizes. Again, they don't have to be this big, but it does help to have big ones. They're round and not flat. And of course, I have water. All right, the first step of this project is to draw our flowers on top of our paper. And what we want to think about is what kind of colors we're going to use. So this is a color wheel. You guys know that. And these are the colors of the rainbow. We want to use contrasting colors. That's our guiding question. What are contrasting colors? And they are opposite on the color wheel. So if I pick a color, if I look opposite, that is that color's contrasting color. So the contrasting color of orange is blue. The contrasting color of blue is, you guessed it, that's orange, right? You can also see that when you look at it on a color wheel, if they were taken away, it almost makes the shape of a bow tie, okay? Let's look at yellow. What is opposite of yellow on the color wheel? Purple. So purple and yellow are contrasting colors. So we're talking about them because we want to use contrasting colors in our painting. I am first going to use warm colors like reds and yellows on this side of the color wheel. And then when I paint my background, I'm going to be using blues and greens on this side of the color wheel. So I'm contrasting the warm colors like red and orange with the cool colors like blue and green. And that's important to think about when you make your painting because that will make your painting pop. It's going to make it look really colorful. If you only use colors from one side of the color wheel, it will look more monotone. And we want this garden painting to pop. All right, let's get started. I'm going to grab a red oil pastel and I'm going to just start making my first flower. I'm going to start with the center with a swirl. I'm using oil pastels and I want to press down pretty hard when I'm doing this because oil pastels have wax in them, and the wax is going to resist the liquid watercolor once we apply it. So our other guiding question is, what is wax resist? If you resist something, you try to keep it away, right? So the oil pastel will keep the watercolor away wherever it is applied. The watercolor will paint in the white space, but it will not go on top of the red. And you'll see that more clearly once we get started on our painting. Right now, we are just drawing our expressive, flowing flowers. Remember, it's good for them to overlap. Go onto your newspaper behind you. All right, Now I'm going to draw some grasses, still using warm colors. If you're confused about warm colors, think about the colors of the sun or a fire. Those are oranges and reds and yellows. So I can also pick up some yellow. Now, if you're watching this and you do have watercolor, but you don't have oil pastels, you can do everything I'm doing right now with a crayon. So that's fine too. All right, let's move to leaves. Now the leaves are going to be drawn with green. Green on the color wheel is opposite of red. So green and red are going to contrast each other. I'm overlapping it, not worried that it's going right over some of my flowers. I want to mostly fill some of the white space that I have. Make some of them double. Grab a different color green, a darker green. The point is to kind of fill your whole paper, fill your whole composition. Don't leave white spaces. Fill those in. Well, we do want to leave white spaces like inside the flower petals, but we don't want to leave whole sections white. All right. Again, if this flower picture is not really your thing, watch the practice video and learn how to make the tree branch. So you can always do that with oil pastel for your final artwork. And you will only create one painting for your final. All right. Okay, now all I'm going to do is just overlap a different warm color right on top of my flowers to add a little more interest. Go right off the page to keep flowing. All right, I might pick up like a peach color and put that over the pink. Doesn't have to perfectly go over the petals you just made. It's okay if they are separate from each other. Maybe a yellow with the orange. Maybe a little bit of pink. I might do like a little line on the center of my petals. All right, I like how it's looking, and I think we are ready to start painting. All right, set those oil pastels off to the side. I'm going to open up the lids on my watercolor paint. If you do buy watercolor paint, it's helpful to put them in a little cup, and you can always mix just a tad of water to make it go a little bit longer. So what I have are mostly two cool colors, and then I also have one warm color. So I have a teal and a blue purple. The teal is going to be the background, and then I also have a pink, and that is a warm color. So they are kind of opposite on the color wheel. They are contrasting each other. All right, I'm going to pick up my brush. I'm going to use my big one. Yours does not have to be this big, but it does help to have it larger. All right. I'm a right-handed person, so I'm going to move these over to the right. All right, what I'm first going to do is paint my background. So again, just like when we were drawing the flowers, it's supposed to be expressive. It's not supposed to be perfect. So if you go inside your lines a little bit, that's completely fine, like how I did right there. It actually adds a little bit more interest. So we'll make art on another day where you'll have to be a little bit more careful, but with this painting that we're making this week, it's all about going a little bit faster and having more fun with materials. All right, what we're seeing down here is that wherever I paint, or whenever I paint right on top of the oil pastel is resisting. That is called wax resist. So the wax of the oil pastel is blocking the watercolor from sitting on top of it. So that is what we call wax resist. I'm going around my leaves. I can even paint right on top of it, and you can see how it kind of just bubbles up and resists that watercolor paint. If you want your watercolor to be lighter, add more water. If you want it to be darker, add more paint. All right, this is the best thing about a round brush. It gets in these little areas in the corners, really nice and neat. I'm gonna paint around here. And when I get to the flower petals, I can put the tip of my round brush in between, kind of like this, or even flick it that way, in between my grasses, like that. All right, let's see. All right, if it looks a little complicated, just keep painting. Sometimes it's hard to tell where flowers stop and start, but that's okay. All right, I can paint right on top of some leaves if I want those to kind of be into the background, but most of the leaves I want to leave white and just leave the outline. All right, let's move up here. There's a little bit of background space peeking through in between these flower petals, so I'm almost just going to paint the shapes that are in between, the negative space in between my flower petals. There's a little bit here, paint here. Trying not to get too much of my background paint into my petals. There's some background space here. Some spaces are really small like that, some are larger. If you are using a paint tray, what you do is you have to put the water in the tray to get it wet, but it works the same. I like liquid watercolor because it tends to be a lot brighter than paint trays, watercolor paint trays, but if that's what you have, then you can use that and it will work for this project. Okay. If you're looking for where you can buy the liquid watercolor or the oil pastels, I have put links on our Google Classroom. You can order them right off of Amazon and they could be there in 2 days. So you can wait to do this project until you have the materials or just use whatever you already have on hand. Okay. All right, let's look. I'm going to take a step back, see where I am. All right. I think that's so far so good with the background. All right, notice I left most of the leaves white. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush, and to clean my brush, I want to twirl it in the water. And kind of just dip it or slide it, scrape it on the sides. Might be helpful to have a rag next to me. Rag, paper towel, always handy when you're painting, so you can kind of wipe it clean. All right, now let's start painting with the warm color, which is a pink. And I want pink to go inside my petals. This is where you're gonna really see that wax resist happening. I'm spreading it out. I'm not just leaving it in one area and then getting more paint. I'm kind of spreading it out, using my brush to pull it around, and I can see wherever there's oil pastel, it is resisting the paint. It's like magic. I love it. All right, just focusing on the flower petals. Even if there's a leaf right there, I'm still trying to go around it. And I'm also trying pretty hard not to mix this pink paint with the background that I just painted. Because the more that I just mix, the more I'm going to kind of muddy my pink, and I want it to stay pink and not super purpley. More water makes it lighter. More paint makes it darker. And I'm just using one color for the entire flower. And the reason we use different oil pastel colors when we first drew it is so that we can kind of just use the same color paint in this step. We'll get different colors with the oil pastels, but we can use pink for every single flower on this. I want this one to be a little bit darker, so I'm dipping a little bit more because the more paint I have on my brush, the darker it is. The more water I have on my brush, the lighter it is, and that's how watercolor works. All right, last flower. Just one petal at a time. So when you're dipping, you can almost twist your brush. See how I twist my wrist? And that almost keeps the paint on. Sometimes if I just dip and then I bring it over, it just drips everywhere. See how it just dripped? So if you twist, that's a little trick to kind of keep that paint on your brush so it doesn't drip on your way over to your painting. If you get some drips, that's fine, but it saves a little bit of paint. Going around my leaves. And when you're painting, you never want to scrub your brush. You always kind of want to pull it towards you. If you scrub your brush, it's going to look like this to this, and it's going to have a bad hair day, and you won't want to use that brush anymore. It's not going to be well taken care of. So make sure you always pull back and forth, but never scrub your brush. That's just a basic painting rule. All right. Let's sit back, let's look. All right, I think the only thing I want to do is add a little bit more paint here down by my grasses. This background has kind of dried a little bit, so I can almost layer it on top of it without mixing all my paint up. And I think that's enough. All right, y'all, I love how this turned out. This looks really cool, and I love how up here you can just see the wax, the oil pastel is resisting. Let's get that focused. Is resisting everywhere where the watercolor is. What you want to do is you want to let this dry in a safe place where you don't think it will be touched. You do not want to lift it up vertically and just kind of hold it like this. You want to leave it flat on the table so that all the water can just completely dry. I wouldn't touch it for at least another 2 hours. Oh, my room just went dark. All right, y'all. In our next video, we are going to talk about how to create a crayon and marker drawing. Good luck.